maybe it was due to my skeptical mother, but although I was impressed by other people's stories, I really didn't or wasn't encouraged to make up many of my own. It seemed to me that the truth spoke for itself. The facts, just the facts, please. I don't need any embellishment. I did get in trouble with this point of view when I was in school and they asked me to write papers. Very often the teacher would say, "Oh, good point," or "Didn't think of that before." And always they would end up with, "What is your conclusion?" Conclusion? I didn't have any. Maybe that was overstepping it a bit. I mean, I didn't think that I could put it together to have a story. But you know what the scientists say? A fact is not a fact without a theory in which to place it, and I guess all of my facts didn't mean too much without a conclusion. The writer Frank McCourt, who became famous for Angela's Ashes, would tell his students, if they were trying to write stories, that it was simple. You know, they'd go down the corridor and they'd be thinking, "Oh, there's so-and-so with that one, and there's so-and-so who's going to win the race, and there's so-and-so who's not too good in class," and they'd be thinking and thinking as they walked down their corridor as they were going to the gym class, and that was what they could write. But I thought, "Mr. McCourt, you don't know me. I don't have a thought in my head. If you ask me what happened today, I don't think I'd know. I'd say, well, maybe I had breakfast." I just didn't have that kind of story. On the other hand, my mother did plant the seed of creating stories in me. She did. Whenever I balked at doing something that she wanted me to do, she would say, "Make a game out of it." So then I would remember sitting in my room, which was a pile of mess there of all the toys and all the clothes, and the kids were calling me from outside, "Come play, come play." And I couldn't go because my room wasn't cleaned up. My mother had told me I had to clean up my room. So I would sit there in the corner and imagine how Superman would do it. He would do it in a second, wouldn't he? And I would see the piles forming as Superman would do it, and I would become Superman and I would do it. And now, even now, when I'm washing the dishes, and it's just there, I don't want to do it, I won't want to do it, and I think, how can I do this as quietly, as gracefully, as quickly as possible? So I do it quietly, gracefully, quickly, quietly, gracefully, quickly, and I do it. And then, I remember this time, I've told some people this time, I was riding along on Highway 8. I was trying to get off on the off-ramp, and the big trucks were coming here, and the cars were coming here. I hate driving. And here my heart was in my mouth. What was I going to do? I felt like pulling over to the side. I felt like stopping right there. I couldn't do it. And then I thought, what would a great race car driver do at that moment? Might have fun. So I became a race car driver for that time, and I got myself all the way home. I must say I was exhausted, but it was fun in its own way, and it was not excruciating. I think I found a way to make all of these little tiny 10-minute stories, 5-minute stories, to get me through this and that and the other thing in life. But what I needed was a story to tell me what I was supposed to do with my life. And very luckily, I did find such a story. I found it while I was living in New York, and I called it The Anthropologist from Mars, because I'm kind of removed. moments on the way to my own story as an explorer of inner territory. And here's what I wrote. I had two great ideas that struck me with such force that to this day I know where I was when I thought each one of them. The first occurred on 96th Street and Park Avenue in New York City. I was walking home from work and feeling very low. The thing that disturbed me most was that there were no ideas in my head. I normally entertain myself with a running philosophical commentary. But then all was quiet. I was unenlivened. I felt leaden, as though I were wearing a heavy suit of armor. And with a vague sense of purposelessness, was pushing one leg in front of the other. My first thought was that I did not even feel human. And then the idea came to me that if Dostoevsky or some other great writer were reporting on this state, he would make it rather interesting. And if any one person were feeling anything, it must be part of the human condition. Then the floodgates opened. I was filled with thought again, and back into the world as my attention was legitimately drawn to the investigation of the presence I was living and the quality of my mind as a desert. The second idea occurred in New York City. Again, this time I was walking to work and had stopped for a light at 53rd Street in Lexington. I was thinking about my goal of earning a PhD in psychology and eventually becoming a psychotherapist. I was feeling pretty down that day and thought that was a crummy goal for a depressed person. What did I have to offer? But then I thought, who could teach more about building a fortune? A rich trust fund kid or a self-made millionaire who had learned all the ropes? I thought, if I could learn to find the way, I would be a scout for anyone else who needed to know. These thoughts became a credo. If you're stuck, look at the scenery. If you're in hell, take notes. Then there are the stories of the way things work in the world. As for the Hasids, who intrigued Buber so much, they had a charismatic leader called the Baal Shem Tov. And when they told the stories about him and the stories he told, they felt the truth of being with him and partook of the energies which emblazoned the world with a luminosity. Of course, there was a right way to tell a story. Buber wrote, a rabbi whose grandfather had been a disciple of the Baal Shem was asked to tell a story. A story, he said, must be told in such a way that it constitutes help in itself. And he told. My grandfather was lame. Once they asked him to tell a story about his teacher, and he related how the holy Baal Shem used to hop and dance while he prayed. My grandfather rose as he spoke, and he was so swept away by his story that he had begun to hop and dance as he showed how the master had done. From that hour on, he was cured of his lameness. Now that's the way to tell tell a story. Now, because I felt myself to be a remote person, an anthropologist, I came across a story that became a favorite of mine. I told it so many times that it was my signature story. I called it The Priest and a Cup of Water. I'll read it to you now. There was a devoted priest who followed the path of the Buddha. He had gone far, but had reached a plateau in his development and seemed he could go no farther. In recognition of his devotion, the Buddha appeared before him. The priest was very happy to see the Buddha because he had a question for him. And so he asked, "Wise teacher, I understand the rhythms of the universe and intuit the place of man. Furthermore, I've perfected serene detachment. But there's one thing that puzzles me. Why is it that man binds himself to a continual wheel of suffering? Why doesn't man see the futility of attachment?" I've been thinking about this for years and have not come up with an answer. The Buddha replied, "I would be glad to discuss this important matter with you, but right now I happen to be a little thirsty. Would you do me a favor and get me a cupful from the river?" The priest said he would gladly do so. As he was dipping his cup into the river, he turned his head. He was now looking directly into the eyes of a lovely maiden who was by his side. She engaged him in conversation and asked him if he were a stranger in this land. As he spoke with her, he seemed to forget his purpose. His complete attention was occupied with this beautiful young lady. He followed her to her father's modest farmhouse and had a lively discussion with the good man, who found him to be most intelligent and amiable. It was not long thereafter that he took the young woman's hand in marriage. He helped the farmer turn a modest enterprise into one of the largest and most prosperous farms in the state. Even more joyously, he and his wife were blessed with 3 fine sons and 3 beautiful daughters. His good fortune and his bliss were without bounds. But then the drought came, and the crops dried up. The parched earth brought famine and sadness to the land. The farmer, now old, was too frail to withstand the rigors of the times and died. Fires ravaged the countryside, and the farmhouse and outbuildings were destroyed. Everyone hoped for the rains, but when they came in such a torrent that the river overflowed and swept away many families. The priest's wife and children, all were lost. All lost. With mournful sadness, he approached the subsiding river. He had a cup in his hand, and as he was dipping his cup into the river, he turned. He was now looking directly into the eyes of the Buddha, who was by his side. You see how stories work? While ideas in themselves may be informative, stories can almost get you there. They can get you to know something you might never have thought of, and they can shape the world.
This is Channel 10 News. A crash was recorded on the highway going to Rancho Bernardo. A car turned over and a young boy was taken to the hospital. It looks pretty bad.
It happened when the lights went out and the moon went into full eclipse.
Oh, that was Thanksgiving weekend. I think it was Joyce Hendler's brother. Didn't Seth fly over the moon?
Oh, that was that night.
Did you hear there was a full eclipse of the moon?
Yes. But I don't know whether that means anything.
I don't know why I had to tell that story. I'm on the hill behind our house. I'd come up here because I didn't know where else to go. I sit down on the ground and scrunch into myself. The world is going too fast and I don't know how to intercede. I close my eyes and let my head drop into the darkness, the better to see Seth. There he is, by my side. Better see him here than in the coolness of his bed. Strange bed, all white, metallic, and surrounded by machines. There was an upside-down cone emerging from his forehead and wires from it going to those machines. The functions in his body were assisted, all assisted, breathing, heartbeat, and whatever else was needed. There were monitor screens everywhere, but no matter how hopefully we looked at them, they disappointed us. It was so surrealistic. I wanted to take a photo. His body was perfect, except for the ruptured spleen, which of course you couldn't see. He'd been working out, so he looked real good. The problem was his head. The doctors said that there was a domino effect. The blow to his head had started the systems collapsing, one after another. All fall down. I didn't take that picture. I would remember or I wouldn't. He would come home or he wouldn't. When I sat there all scrunched over and searched, I saw that Seth and I were in a little boat on a swiftly moving river. And then at one point it seemed as though he had left my side and was sitting on a bench on the river's bank. I continued on the river alone. I knew he wasn't coming home. Why can't we have some music when we need it? Where's the music? Soon I will be done with the troubles of this world. Oh, the troubles of this world. The troubles of this world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of this world, 'cause I'm going home to live with God. No more weeping, no more weeping, child.
No more weeping, you're going home to live with God. Soon we will be done with the troubles of this world, and I'm going home to live with God.
Take a break.